Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Season 3 of Midday with Trey. I'm your host, Trey. Let's get right into the show. Today's guest is an author, a professor of history, and just happens to be the president of Coastal Carolina University. Please let's give a big round of applause for our Season 3 finale guest, Michael T. Benson, the president of CCU. We don't, a live audience here, but we can clap it up. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Like I was telling you before, you have definitely been on my list, and so I'm glad we were able to make this work for the Season 3 finale.
My pleasure. Thank you. I've followed your podcast, and I'm really honored to kind of bring us home this semester. So thanks for the invitation.
Of course. So let's get right into it. So I would love to know how you let's start with your childhood. Where did Michael T. Benson grow up? What were your childhood like? Where did your experience come, before the PhD, the graduate, all this other stuff?
So I was born in Salt Lake City, Utah, and when I was 6 months old, my family up and moved to Dallas, Texas. So I really had my formative years in Dallas. My father had gone to Stanford, got a master's degree in education. He really wanted to be a high school principal. But while he was at Stanford, he had 2 children and my mom to support, and he started selling cookware door to door. So he found his calling really in life was sales. So that took him across the country, different jobs. We lived in Indiana for a spell, then back to Utah, then back to Texas. And then my sophomore year in high school, we moved to Utah where I finished high school. And then I'm the youngest of 6 kids. My mom didn't work outside the home apart from doing a lot of stuff at the schools where we went. And then she was a piano teacher. She had a little piano studio down in the basement of our house. And so we were all required to play. We started on the piano, all 6 of us. My brother branched out to the tuba. Stephanie was the best pianist of all of us. Stacy plays the viola. Meg plays the cello. Mary plays the flute. And I play the piano as well. So my sisters are immeasurably more talented than I am. But I got a question the other day, what's my favorite holiday tradition? And I said holiday music, because I go home at night from here and I sit down and play for a good 90 minutes or 2 hours, just Christmas music, which I really love. So I have my mother to thank for that. I spent the better part of my 20s overseas, 2 years on a church mission to Rome, Italy, 3 years in England going to graduate school, and then off and on about 1.5 years in Jerusalem. I was in Israel studying. So a lot of my worldview was shaped by experiences I've had outside the United States. I love being an American, but I also love traveling and visiting other places and learning about cultures. I speak Italian. I studied Arabic and Hebrew and failed miserably at both because they're very hard. But, my parents, we didn't have a lot growing up. I never went to Disneyland until I had my own children. Summer vacations really were spent in the car driving to Canada, where my mother was from. But we, whatever extra money my parents had, they spent it on education and music lessons. So we were expected that college was something all of us were going to do. And that started from my grandfather, who was the oldest of 11 children from a dairy farm, and he was the first to go to college. So there was this expectation that we were going to pay for it. You figure out whether it's a loan or scholarship, so we were all very motivated to do well. I had an offer to run track at the University of Utah. I was a half miler. Started running really when I was in my early teens. Was a marathoner. Ran a 2:41, which is not bad for a marathon. But I realized that my calling in life really was probably to get into academics. I wasn't going to be professional at anything. And I studied political science at Brigham Young, but also studied English and history. And people ask me, if you had it to do over again, would you still study that? I wouldn't study political science. I would do English literature. British Lit, that's something I really, really love. Because I tell students that if you have the skill to write, regardless of what you go into, that will serve you well in any capacity. Right. So I'm afraid students today get so accustomed to texting and LOL and this.
What do you think about, on that point? What do you think about AI and the ChatGPT?
Yeah, my word.
Like that? I know Coastal's working hard to try and figure out what's going on in all these policies and whatnot. But where do you... What do you think about that? I actually am doing a documentary for my graduate thesis project this coming semester about the AI use at Coastal, and I found pretty on both extremes. I found some students use it for to write all their stuff. I've just seen some students use it for more of drafting, more of idea creation, and so I think it's all really interesting, these new technologies when they come out, how we as students use them. Yeah,
Wes Fondren is kind of at the forefront of trying to help us draft a policy. And when I say draft a policy, chances are AI is going to continue to advance. Yeah. And we're trying our best to come up with some kind of response to our expectation that students do their own work. You can use AI, you can cite it properly, but it still needs to be a product of what you do as a student. And that's what I told my students this semester. I taught a class this semester on World War I. And shout out to Renee Searfoss there in my home department of history, who's helped me out so much. But AI is a whole other thing. And when I was in school, we didn't have anything like that. And to kind of put a final point on how I got to where I am, finished my doctorate, didn't have any sort of job prospects, so I went to roof houses with my cousin, got into construction, and one day on the roof, I asked one of my coworkers what his dad did, what his mom did, and they both worked at the University of Utah. And that's how I got into academic administration, and that was in 1994. So I am now in my 30th year of doing this.
That's amazing. You must love it then.
Yeah, I do. And I love being around students. I have 5 children myself, 2 of whom are college graduates. The youngest 3 are still at home. And there's nothing in this world, Trey, that can change your life like having access to education. George Washington Carver Horace Mann called it the great equalizer. And George Washington Carver said it's the key that unlocks the golden door of freedom. And I use that quote a lot, and I just think it's so beautiful because it suggests that no matter who you are, where you're from, where you want to go, if you commit to getting as much education as you possibly can, it literally can't take you anywhere.
My great-grandfather, he's still with us to this day, thankfully. He's 90. Just turned 97 or 98, and he's 98, so obviously he grew up, in a different time. Yeah. And so his goal was same as you. He thought education is very important. So he literally had to do a class a semester for about 10 years just to finish his undergrad degree, because that's all he could afford. He worked for the United States Post Office for pretty much his whole career. And he really instilled in me and my parents as well. Most of my grandparents' parents are in education in some facet, and it really just instilled that education is very important and it can hold weight, like you just said. Yeah. When I told him I was going to graduate school, he almost cried because he was like, that's something he wished he could do, but he just didn't have time with his career and raising a family and all that. And obviously he's a patriarch of the family now, but growing up and just hearing some of his stories, it's like, wow, like we take it sometimes for granted, the education access that we have. Even if it's digital learning, we take it for granted.
So last year I had a student named Ola Watson who came to HTTC when she was 72 and graduated from there and then came here and finished her bachelor's degree. She was a student of mine in my History of American Higher Ed. And I was so proud of her at graduation. She came across the stage. Her kids were there, her grandchildren were there, her husband, tears coming down her face. And I knew how hard she had worked, but how long she had waited for that chance to finally go get her degree, and she did it. And if you can get a degree when you're 75 years old, what's holding us back? So I was really inspired by Ola.
Yeah, it's amazing. So let's talk about how you balance your life. Like I said in the intro, you are a published author multiple times over. You are a professor of history in the Edwards College. You're a president of a university. How do you balance all that on top of, raising a family, doing things that you love, your passions, your hobbies?
No. We all have the same finite amount of time, 24 hours a day. How we choose to spend it is entirely up to us. So we make time for what's important. And what's important to me, first and foremost, is my family. I have my wife, Debbie, and you meet her and you'll see I'm married up. And then my 5 children, 2 of whom are off doing their own thing, grown and professionals in their fields. And then our 3 little ones at school. When I say little ones, Truman's 16, Tatum's 15, and Talmadge is 13. So I really try and make that my top priority. Now, do I succeed all the time? No. I get pulled in a lot of different directions. So my work is really important to me too, but it's kind of ancillary to my primary responsibility, first as a husband and then a father. My faith is really important to me. Raised in a family that really valued faith. As I said, education and making sure we provide as much access to as many people at an affordable price is something I've always believed in, because I'm the beneficiary of that. So, in terms of striking a balance, you just have to decide, look, these are where my priorities are. I'm a big believer in taking care of yourself, getting enough rest and exercise, and we live in such a beautiful place. I had a chance to walk around campus for a little while, and I hope we never take that for granted, that so many people from New Jersey and other places, it's already getting cold in the Northeast, and here we are. And so those are some of the things that I try and do to help strike a balance. Like I said, if I want to relax, I'll go home and play the Steinway that I inherited from my mother. And that piano means a great deal, sentimentally to me as well.
We gotta have you have a concert for that. With college playing your piano,
what I'd like to do is bring my sisters and their kids, because we could have a little mini orchestra.
A family reunion.
Yeah, it would be great fun.
Okay, so this is a little bit of a weird question, but if you were to trade places with a student at Coast Carolina University, what would you hope to see? Or what would you hope to gain?
From the student perspective?
From the student perspective, yes, sir.
I would hope that from that perspective, I saw a university that was wholly committed to my success. That, having a climbing wall is cool. Student union's neat. But is there the focus on academics and helping me achieve my academic goals and helping me succeed as a person? The fact that parents, guardians entrust us with the education, the care, the keeping of their son or daughter, grandson, granddaughter, whatever, is really important. And so I would hope that student saw a network around that put them in a place to be successful. I'm not talking about coddling them or doing the work for them or, pamper them. But, because I was raised in a home where there was high expectations. But with expectations also come the support system to help you achieve your goals. So I hope that student, if I were in their place, I could readily see that. And, when you talk about get here, get after it, get into it, and get help. So if that student needs some help, they're not too shy or too reticent to ask for it. Because at a certain point in life, all of us need help every single day. So I hope that student recognizes that the support system is there to take advantage of it.
Amazing. Okay, and this is just a wrap-up type question. What advice would you have for current or future potential students looking either to go into higher education in general or aspire to be a president like yourself of a university? What would you advise them to start doing now that can set them up in the future for success?
Well, my doctorate is in history with a focus on Middle Eastern history. So what I studied really doesn't impact what I do every day. It did teach me how to make goals, to work hard, to discipline myself, to get along with people. Those skill sets, they call them soft skills. The ability for you and me as individuals to respect each other, to get along, to appreciate those differences. But at day's end, to really work hard. And so regardless of what students choose to do, you got to find something you're really passionate about.
Right.
And I don't care if it's communication or art or chemistry or physics or whatever. If you want to be a teacher, dive into it and embrace it and be the very, very best you can be. I sit here today the beneficiary of people who gave me an opportunity. So I really try and seek out students who are willing to work hard and willing to represent whatever it is that they represent as best they can. And you'll be amazed at what opportunities you'll be given. So, enjoy it. I tell students all the time, look, college is one of the best times in your life. You can afford to be selfish in not a negative way, but you don't have the demands of a lot of things that you do when they call it adulting. And enjoy this time and embrace it and recognize that you probably won't ever have a time like this ever again.
Right. We had this is 2 episodes ago, we were talking to Tyreek Pierre. I'm sure.
I know Tyreek. Maryland, he's my man.
We were talking about momentum
Yeah.
and what momentum means after you graduate. And
Yeah.
he's very involved, of course, in student life. And he was saying, we were talking about, just how when you graduate, when you're in college, you're doing all these things, your classes, schoolwork, extracurricular, yada, yada, yada. And then you have all this momentum build up. And then when you leave, it's kind of like students sometimes almost get lost.
Yeah.
And we were saying that I feel like students should breathe, take that time, take a second, take a beat to breathe, whether that means a week vacation in Jamaica, or that means getting a job that is low impact, or getting a job that's your dream, but just taking that time mentally to breathe, to collect yourself and figure out what you want to do, so you can set yourself up for success. Because some students, they go out and they rush, or they get, jobs that may help them, but that's not really what they want to do, which of course you have to do as you're progressing your career.
Yeah, sure.
But just that breath, I feel like is important, because I feel like that's what I had to do. 'Cause I did degree in 3, so my college was expedited.
Yeah.
And sometimes I look back, I'm like, should I have taken that year? Should I have just not did degree in 3, just complete the 4 years? But at the same time, I wouldn't make it to where I am today. I'm happy with where I am in my career. I'm getting to sit here with you, so that's a positive. And just take that breath. Did you have any aspects like that when you graduated, with any of your many degrees, where you had to sit back and you had to take a breath?
Yeah, I after my junior year, I decided to step away from campus entirely and do 2 things. I interned in Washington, D.C. for the Senate Judiciary Committee, made no money at all, but just subsisted on living with a few roommates and trying my best to go as many free receptions with food as possible. And then after that, I spent 6 months, I sold my car, and I spent 6 months as a study abroad student in Jerusalem. That was my first exposure to that part of the world. And that changed my life, because that led me down that path toward graduate school. But, if I had not had that year away where I came back my senior year very motivated. I knew I wanted to graduate. And then I took a year off after my undergrad before grad school and worked back in Washington, D.C. So, I appreciate what you said. You don't have to rush through it. Now, granted, I don't want students to incur more debt than they have to.
Right, yes.
But my parents always used to say 2 things you can go into debt for: your education and a house. Try your best to save as much money as you possibly can. But I'm really glad I took that time off, because it led me to kind of reset and get after graduate school, which I did.
Amazing. Okay, guys, don't go anywhere. We're going to have President Benson talk about his book collection in just 1 second. All right, it's time for the books of the week. Take it away, President Benson.
So this first one, when I finished my dissertation in 1996, I said, I've put so much into this. No, I take that back. It was earlier than that. I finished in 94, graduated in 95, and I said, I'm going to see if I can take it and get it published. So I was very naive. I didn't understand the world of academic publishing. I took a couple chapters and sent it to Oxford, Cambridge, UCLA, Berkeley, Yale, Harvard. Got the same response. I kept all the letters, all the rejection letters saying, we don't publish doctoral dissertations. So I learned my lesson and took and revised it a little bit. I sent it to 2 presses that got kind of nibbles, University of Missouri, because it's about Harry Truman, and then Prager, which is a press out of Connecticut. And Prager said, we'll take it as it is. You have to make it camera ready and set it and all that. So that was my first publication in 97. I took several years before I did another book, but I was given a lecture at Yale Law School in 2015, 16. And the young man who hosted me said, you really should make a book out of what you talked about. And I said, I wish I had time. He said, I'll help you. So his name's Hal Boyd, went to Yale Law, and we did this book together. And that was great fun. And it reminded me of how much I loved being a graduate student and writing, which led to this book, which is my most recent. And this was published last year by Johns Hopkins Press. In 2017, I visited Johns Hopkins, which is in Baltimore, for the first time, and I was really amazed that no one had done a biography of this gentleman, who was the first president. And if you look at presidential inaugural addresses in the history of American higher ed, there is none more powerful than the one he gave in 1876. In so many ways, it's considered the gold standard. So I go to a bookstore at Hopkins, and I said, could I get a single-volume biography of Daniel Coit Gilman? And there happened to be an archivist there, and they said, no one's written anything about him for 60 years. So I said, here's my chance. Long story short, I submitted a proposal to Hopkins Press. They accepted it. And I took the COVID year off, researched, wrote, and did about 165,000 words in 11 months. and then spent a year through the revision process. And it came out, and I'm happy to say that last week Forbes named it one of the best higher ed books in 2023. So I thank my wife and kids, because during COVID I'd come home at night and regale them with Daniel Coy Gilman stories. They're like, "Dad, please, not another Gilman story." So they were as happy as I was when it was done. But that's my collection.
Okay, and where can they find, if they wanted to, purchase one of these?
These are all available on Amazon, and this one, the price varies based on availability. But it's kind of a high price point. I hope they'll do it in paperback one of these days. But you can find it on Amazon. Or maybe a used version on eBay.
Maybe, yeah. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of Midday with Trey. Season 3 has been an amazing one. We had a great season closing with President Benson. So again, thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure, thank you.
I hope you can watch the episode back. It is to your liking, of course, but I've had a great conversation with you, and I know the audience will learn something as well. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, until next season, which will probably be in fall, in spring. We're coming back next spring. I will see you all later on Midday with Trey. Thank you so much. Bye.
All right. Awesome. That's pretty slick.